Hello everyone. Today we are going to study female reproductive system. So in the last class you have studied what is reproduction, types of reproduction and the phases of reproduction and male reproductive system. So when you compare male reproductive system to female reproductive system, it is a little complicated and complex because in case of male reproductive system, only gametogenesis and insemination takes place. That means it is concerned with only two steps. But in case of female, it is concerned with ovulation, fertilization, pregnancy, parturition, and child care. In case of male, what happens? The gametogenesis takes place, means sperm production, and once the sperms are produced through the insemination process, it is transferred to the female genital tract. So, but in case of female, what happens? Ovulation followed by fertilization. Fusion of male and female gamete takes place in the female reproductive system. And then pregnancy, parturition, that is giving birth to a baby. Even after the childbirth, the human female reproductive system is designed in such a way that the child care is also taken. Next, so in today's class we are going to study the female reproductive system. This diagram is also very important. Now, what are the parts of female reproductive system? Mainly, there are pair of ovary, pair of fallopian tube. These are the ovary 1 and 2. Okay, and uterus. And these tube is fallopian tube. Next is cervix and vagina. This is cervix and this is vagina, and some glands are also associated with the female reproductive system. All the glands and all the parts of the female reproductive system integrated functionally and structurally so that the processes should take place easily. Next, so we will study in detail about female reproductive system. The first is ovary. Okay. Ovaries are 2 in number, located on the either side, left ovary and right ovary, and they are located in the pelvic region or lower abdominal region. They are suspended in the cavity with the help of ligaments. These are called as ligaments. On one side, it is attached to the uterine wall or the uterus, and other side of the ovaries are attached to the body wall or pelvic wall of the body. Now, these are almond shaped. The shape of the ovary is unshed almond shape. The length is 8 cm and the width is 5 cm. Okay. So, the ovary, peripheral part of the ovary is peripheral cortex and the inner medulla. Right. Next, these ovaries are called as the primary sex organs. So, in case of male, the testes was the primary sex organ. I told you why we call it as primary sex organ, because even in case of female, the ovaries are the primary sexual organs, because the formation of egg, it is also called as ovum. The formation of ovum and also some hormones some female hormones are secreted in the ovary. That is why we call ovaries as the primary sex organs, and rest of the things in the female reproductive system are secondary sexual organs. So it is about ovary. Next is fallopian tube. Whatever structure you can see here from this color to here is called as fallopian tube. Okay, this whole thing is fallopian tube. The fallopian tube will study, it is for about 10 to 12 centimeter in length, and the funnel shaped structure which is called as infundibulum. Infundibulum. Okay, this funnel shaped structure, and this wide structure is called as ampulla, and as it goes here, the ampulla, the wider thing, is going to be narrowed into a small tube. It is called as isthmus. Okay. All these three parts together called as fallopian tube. Fallopian tube. And this fallopian tube is also called as oviduct. Oviduct. Because, why we call it as oviduct? Because the ovum which is secreted, I mean to say which is formed by the ovary, is carried through this specific duct. That is why we call it as oviduct. Okay. So whatever the ovum or the egg which is formed in the ovary, it is carried by this duct. And here I have made some finger like projections in this color. This is called as fimbriae. Fimbriae. Okay. This is very important. What is the function of this finger like structures which are present in the oviduct or fallopian tube? This is responsible to take the egg from the ovum from the ovary. It creates some, the movement of this fimbriae creates some suctional power that catches the ovum from the ovary, and this fallopian tube carries the egg. And also you need to remember that the fertilization process takes place in the fallopian tube. It is also the site of fertilization, you can say. Site of fertilization. What is fertilization? The fusion of male and female gamete. The female gamete, egg is fused with the sperm, male gamete. So the fertilization takes place in the fallopian tube. That is also called as oviduct. So this is the site of fertilization. The next is uterus. We'll study about uterus. This inverted pear-shaped structure which I have drawn in the white color is called as uterus. It is also called as womb, garbhashaya anta heltire. Okay. So this upper part, the bulged upper part, is called as uterine fundus, and this cavity is called as uterine cavity. Okay. So mainly you need to remember the walls of the uterus. This uterus is covered or lined with the three walls. Okay. The white colored outermost wall is called as perimetrium. Perimetrium. Okay. It is fibrous in nature. The green colored thick middle wall of the uterus is called as myometrium. Myometrium. Okay. Myometrium is, why we call it as myometrium? Myo means muscular. Okay. this is a muscular wall, thick wall, which is called as myometrium, and it is also responsible for the contraction during the delivery of the baby. The innermost wall of the ovary is called as endometrium. Endo means inner. Endometrium. This fimbria, I'll write it here. Okay, so these three are the layers of uterus. The uterus is made up of these three layers. Outermost is perimetrium, the middle one is myometrium, and the innermost is endometrium. And remember, the thickness of the endometrium differs cyclically during the menstrual cycle, which is the concept you are going to study in the further classes. So remember, the endometrium is the innermost uterine layer. Now, the uterus is the site of implantation. Okay, in the fallopian tube, the fertilization takes place. After the fertilization, the zygote is going to implant itself in the wall of the uterus, in the womb. It is also called as womb. So this is about uterus, and the one side of the ovary is connected to the uterus through the ligaments. Now this uterus is going to narrow in the lower portion, and this tube, muscular tube, thick tube, is called as cervix. So this portion is cervix. Okay, and the narrow canal of the cervix is called as cervical canal, and this is going to open in the vagina. Okay, so this is called vagina. The cervix and vagina together, we call it as birth canal, because during parturition the baby is going to come from this way. Okay, so this is the cervix and vagina, together we call it as birth canal. And even during the intercourse, this is the path of semen. Okay, through which the semen enters in the female reproductive system during sexual intercourse. So this is about female reproductive system. Let me recall it. The female reproductive system is having pair of ovaries, pair of fallopian tube, uterus, cervix and vagina. Okay, glands we are going to study in the next class. So pair of ovaries, these are called as primary sex organs, and the length of the ovary is 8 cm, the width is 5 cm. Both the ovaries are located one on the either side of the body in the pelvic region, and they are held with the ligament on the lateral side. One side of the ovary is attached with the mucous ligaments to the pelvic wall, and the other side of the ovary is attached to the uterus. The next is uterus. Fallopian tube. Fallopian tube is the duct which carry the egg from the ovary to the uterus, and as oviduct, where it is the site of fertilization. Next, and it is also consists of 3 portions. We study the fallopian tube into 3 parts. The funnel-like structure, the funnel. Okay, so the funnel like structure is called as infundibulum, and the next broad structure is called as ampulla, and which is further going to narrow into a tube, that is isthmus. All together we call it as fallopian tube. It is also called as oviduct, which is the site of fertilization. Next comes the uterus. So uterus is an inverted pear shaped structure. The upper part of the uterus is called as uterine fundus, and the uterus is made up of 3 layers. It is lined with the 3 layers. The outermost being perimetrium, the middle one is myometrium, and innermost is endometrium. And next, the uterus is going to narrow itself into a muscular tube which is called as cervix, and it opens into the vagina. It is about 7 centimeter, 7.5 centimeter. Together this cervix and the vagina are called as birth canal. Here we complete the female reproductive system. In female reproductive system, we have discussed about primary sex organ, that is ovary, and rest are secondary sex organs. In secondary sex organs, we have already discussed fallopian tube, uterus, cervix and vagina. Now we will discuss external genitalia, which is called as vulva. Now you know that the vagina is the external opening of the female reproductive system, which looks like a depression called as vestibule, in which there are 2 openings, the upper opening and the lower opening. The upper opening is called as urethral opening, through which urine passes, and the lower opening is vaginal opening. Vaginal opening. This vaginal opening is covered with a thin membrane. Partially it is covered with thin membrane, and this membrane is called as hymen. Hymen, and which tone in the first intercourse or first coitus. But in some women, even after the intercourse, it persists. And in some cases, it is torn by the heavy activity like horse riding and some other sports activity. Okay, this is the vaginal opening, which is covered partially with the thin membrane called as hymen. This vestibule is covered with the thin tissue. A smaller flap covering, a paired covering, is called as labia minora, above which there is one more tissue covering. This labia, it's a diagrammatic representation. Okay, this labia minora is covered with the labia majora. Labia majora. Now, above the urethral opening, the junction of this labia minora, between this labia minora, above the urethral opening, there is a very tiny small finger-like projection, which is called as clitoris. So this is about external genitalia, and also there is a cushion of fatty tissues which is covered with the pubic hair, that is called as mons pubis. This fatty tissue, and which runs downwards towards the labia majora. So these are the parts of external genitalia. Now we are done with external genitalia. We have studied external genitalia. We'll come to glands. Okay. Here on the either side of this vaginal opening, there are a pair of glands called as bulbovestibular glands or Bartholin's gland. Okay, and these glands are helpful in the mucus secretion, which acts as a lubrication during the sexual intercourse. So this is about bulbovestibular gland, or it is also called as Bartholin's gland. This is about the first gland, and the most important gland is mammary gland. Next we will study mammary gland. Mammary gland is the characteristic feature of all female mammals, and they are two in number. They are a paired structure commonly called as breast, and the glandular tissue and fat, considerable amount of fat constitute the breast. In each breast, mammary lobes are there. The glandular tissue which is present in each is divided into 15 to 20 mammary lobes. I have drawn here. This sac-like structure is mammary lobe. 15 to 20 mammary lobes in each. Now, they are consist of a small sac-like structure called as mammary alveoli or alveolus. These are responsible for the production of milk, which is the secreted milk which is stored in the alveolar lumen, and this is the duct called as mammary tubule. All the ducts coming from all the lobes are collected. A bulged structure which connects the mammary tubules and the lactiferous duct is called as ampulla. It also stores some considerable amount of milk here, which is sucked out through the lactiferous duct. These are the lactiferous duct through which the milk is sucked out. This is ampulla, and these are the mammary lobes. In the mammary lobes, the small sac-like structures which are called as alveoli, which are responsible for the production of milk, and this tip portion is called as nipple, around which a dark pinkish colored area is called as areola. Here we complete the mammary gland.